Hi there. My name is Jared, and this is Mellow Mentoring. I'm going to be doing something a little bit different today. A soft spoken ASMR video about healing from codependency and trauma. Everything I'm going to mention is from the Holistic Psychologist Instagram page. It's simply an amazing piece of work that you'll see why I think so in a minute. So, what I'm going to do is soft spokenly speak about a few pages of things she has had to say. Her name is Dr. Nicole LaPerma, and she's an amazing woman. So, without further ado, I'm going to get started. Healing for trauma and codependency. How to become more self-empowered. And the goal of this is to listen to this into the evenings so that it becomes bombarded into our brains, seeps into our subconscious, and begins to become a part of who we are. How to become more self-empowered. Create daily rituals for yourself. Meditation, journaling, or drawing. Pause and work through triggers to respond rather than habitually react. Create boundaries in your relationships. Witness how you speak about yourself. This is your inherited conditioning. Observe what you consume every day. This is what you manifest into your life experience. Practice saying no without apologizing. Regularly encourage and show gratitude towards people who impact you. The inner work is a lifelong journey of coming home to your authentic self. The inner work is not a competition, a quote unquote quick fix, or a one size fits all path. The inner work is something no one else can do for you. The inner work is not something we can force or push people into. The inner work is learning self-compassion and meeting others where they are at. The inner work is not comparing, judging, or punishing self for lack of progress. The inner work is witnessing and working through your ego. The inner work is not engaging in ego battles where you need to be right. Emotional confusion versus emotional intelligence. Emotional confusion is I can get or convince someone to do something if I push them. Emotional intelligence is people make their own choices, and it's not my place to force or push. Emotional confusion is I often feel resentful or burnt out in my relationships. Emotional intelligence is I place boundaries and communicate openly if I feel resentful. Emotional confusion is I dissociate or lash out. Emotional intelligence is I practice self-observation. Emotional confusion is my codependency leads me to betray myself. Emotional intelligence is I place myself and my needs first to show up for others. Emotional confusion is I rarely, if ever, spend time alone or in silence and desire distraction. Emotional intelligence is I practice journaling, meditating, and self-reflection. So in this part, there's going to be an event, the inner child belief, and then the wise inner parent reframe. Very useful exercise. The event, parent criticizing our behavior. Inner child belief, I am not lovable. They've rejected me. Wise inner parent reframe. These things were said to them by their own parents, and not the reality of who I am. Event, passed over for job promotion. The inner child belief would be, I am unworthy. This person is better, smarter than I'll ever be. The wise inner parent reframe is, this position does not affect my value or worthiness. The right opportunity will come when it's meant to. Event, I was ghosted by a new love interest. The inner child belief is, I'll never be chosen, or you'll never meet that person. I deserve to be alone forever. The wise inner parent reframe is, I'll never know why this person is unavailable, and it does not reflect who I am. It reflects their own wounding. Next, we have empathy versus codependency. Empathy is, I understand how and why you feel the way you do. Codependency is, I feel what you feel, or I don't feel like myself. Empathy is, I am highly sensitive to people's energy. Codependency is, I shift who I am based on the person's perception. Empathy is, my relationships have boundaries and clear limits. Codependency is, limits and boundaries feel wrong or selfish. Empathy is, I hold space so you can express yourself and speak your truth. Codependency is, I walk on eggshells and don't feel free to fully express myself. Empathy is, I understand all relationships have conflicts and growing pains. Codependency is, life comes to a complete stop and I could not function through conflict. Boundaries sound like, I understand you're angry, but do not speak to me that way. I won't be able to make it. I would appreciate you not bringing this up anymore. If you text me, I'll text back at a time that works for me. Boundaries include an action. If this continues, I won't be spending time here. If you cannot respect what I'm asking, I'll need space. If you continue to pressure me or attempt to guilt me, I'm going to have to end this conversation. Boundaries feel like confusing, terrifying, and guilt-ridden if we came from codependent dynamics. Ego says, that should have been me. Consciousness says, trust the timing of your path. Ego says, they made a fool of me. Consciousness says, they revealed how they feel about themselves. Ego says, things around me need to change for me to change. Consciousness says, as I change, the world around me changes. The trauma brain. 1. Obsessive desire to be chosen by new romantic partners without any awareness of how you and your body feels about the connection. 2. Chronic social anxiety about how new people will perceive you. 3. A need for consistent distraction from the present moment through substance abuse, social media scrolling, love/sex, or chronic daydreaming. 4. Trauma brain is ego stories of self-judgment and comparison. 5. A lack of self-trust that leads to procrastination and self-sabotage shame cycles. How to place a boundary without apologizing. I like having you here, and I'll need you to call in advance before showing up next time. I'd rather not talk about my diet. If you'd like to borrow something, I'll need you to ask me first. It's perfectly okay to be angry. It is not okay to slam or throw things. I know you are being supportive and just need us to not talk about my ex today. Things that bring growth. Uncomfortable, difficult conversations. Doing something you're terrible at until you become good at it. Getting past the stories your ego creates. Viewing the behaviors you're ashamed of as the scared child inside of you asking for healing. Placing your own happiness at the top of your priority list. Healing from trauma can create high levels of emotional intelligence. It can create a clear path to our true calling and life purpose. Healing from trauma can create empathy, compassion, and awareness for why people behave the way they do. It can create the ability to act beyond the false conditioned self who is in survival mode. It can create humor, joy, play, and creativity. And lastly, it can create awareness of spirituality, a peaceful knowing that you are a divine part of an interconnected world. So that's my few pages on healing and trauma. There is much, much more where that came from, and I'd be curious to know, would you like these to be longer in the future? Do you like this kind of format? Is it interesting to you? Does it help you? I'd love to hear your feedback on this, because what my audience thinks is very important to me, and I'm going to try my best to make you all happy. And again, thank you very much for the support, and I can't underestimate enough how awesome this woman's page is. Holistic Psychologist on Instagram. Dr. Nicole LaParma, I believe her name is. But I'm going to double check that to be sure. Thank you for watching, and have a good night.